Every choice you have ever made, what to eat for breakfast, who to marry, was decided for you before you formulated the thought. The human brain operates like a massive, dark factory. Millions of processes run behind closed doors, while the conscious I, the voice in your head, is merely a stowaway on a transatlantic ship, taking credit for a journey it is not actually steering. This creates a collision between two fields of science. Neurobiology suggests that free will is a biological illusion, yet behavioral psychology has decades of data proving that executive willpower is the highest predictor of human success. We are going to look at the exact biological mechanisms pulling your strings and the precise millisecond your brain makes decisions without you. Recognizing this hidden automated machinery is the only way you can actually hope to take control of your own behavior. To understand how your brain makes decisions, picture your conscious mind as a morning newspaper reader. You only receive the headlines after the events have already happened. Deep inside your skull, localized subnetworks of neurons are constantly gathering data, forming coalitions, and voting on plans of action entirely behind the scenes. When an idea or a sudden hunch strikes you, you are experiencing the final output of neural consolidation that your brain has been working on for hours or even days. You actually experience this mental lag physically in your daily life. When a car suddenly backs out into your lane, your foot hits the brake pedal before you consciously register the hazard. This delay is an evolutionary necessity. Conscious deliberation is slow. If early humans had to cognitively process the exact trajectory of a leaping predator before moving, they would have been eaten. Instead, our daily lives are run by highly automated programs, alien subroutines or zombie systems that handle the complex mechanics of living. Your consciousness is not an executive CEO issuing real-time commands. It is an alert system. It only wakes up when those automated systems encounter a violated expectation, like a flat tire or a missing step on a staircase. In 1997, neuroscientist Antoine Bechara designed an experiment to test how fast this unconscious machinery calculates complex data. This diagram tracks his setup. Subjects chose from 4 decks of cards. Some decks were rigged to yield a net financial gain, while others were engineered to produce a slow mathematical loss. Below the cards, a real-time line graph tracks the subject's skin conductance, measuring the stress response of their autonomic nervous system. The conscious results were straightforward. It took subjects about 25 draws from the decks before they could articulate which stacks were rigged against them, but the biological data showed something different. By the 13th draw, the autonomic nervous system generated anticipatory warning spikes whenever a subject reached for a bad deck. Long before the conscious mind could do the math, the physical body ran statistical simulations and generated a gut feeling to warn the subject. Bechara examined the necessity of this physical warning by testing a group with damage to their ventromedial prefrontal cortex, the area that translates these signals into choices. This damage left them unable to generate that specific physical stress spike. The outcome for these patients was a total failure to adapt. Even after they consciously realized which decks were draining their money, they continued choosing the bad cards. For the patients in Bechara's study, conscious awareness was not enough to override their behavior. Without that unconscious gut feeling to steer the choice, the intellectual knowledge of the loss wasn't sufficient to change the action. If the body calculates statistics before we know it, when exactly do we make a choice? To find out, we look to Benjamin Libet's neurobiological test of free will. Libet placed electrodes on the heads of his subjects, asked them to lift a single finger at a random time, and told them to note the exact moment they felt the conscious urge to move.
The first data point aligned with our standard understanding of action. Subjects reported feeling the urge to move a quarter of a second before the physical finger actually lifted. But the EEG brainwave data disrupted this model of human agency. This timeline tracks the electrical activity in the subject's brains, leading up to that physical movement. Looking at this trace, we see a buildup of electrical activity, known as the readiness potential, rising a full second before the subject ever registered the urge to move. The brain's subnetworks had already voted and initiated the physical action, while the conscious mind was completely unaware. The newspaper reader analogy holds up under laboratory conditions. Your brain only prints the headline that you had an idea to lift your finger after the unconscious machinery has finalized the work. Some try to rescue the concept of free will by pointing to quantum physics, arguing that microscopic uncertainty in the universe allow room for personal agency. This defense fails the logic test. An unpredictable, probabilistic brain action offers you no more conscious choice than a strictly deterministic coin flip. The EEG recordings show a continuous physical causal chain. From this perspective, there is no detectable moment where a non-physical will enters the circuit to initiate the movement. This brings us to a paradox. If we are highly efficient, unconscious automatons, why does behavioral psychology insist that willpower dictates our success? We can find the answer by examining Walter Mischel's psychological studies from the 1970s, famously analyzed by Scott G. Halford. Mischel's testing parameters were simple. He left young children alone in a room with a marshmallow and gave them clear instructions not to eat the treat. The results tracked these children for decades. The subjects who delayed gratification grew up to be measurably healthier and more academically successful than those who ate the treat immediately. This isolated metric, executive willpower and the ability to manage distractions, stands as the highest statistical driver of a successful life. How can executive willpower dictate the entire trajectory of our lives if our neural circuitry decides what we are going to do a full second before we are aware of it? This conflict between unconscious readiness and executive willpower is managed through a process called automatization. Your brain requires a massive amount of metabolic energy to function. Its ultimate evolutionary goal is to minimize that energy use while maximizing operational speed. When you face a clumsy conscious task, like learning to ride a bicycle, your brain physically rewires its hardware to burn that specific task into the circuitry. Consider a professional athlete. They spend thousands of hours in intense practice with one specific goal: to eliminate conscious thought during execution. If a tennis player stops to cognitively process the physics of an approaching 90-mile-per-hour serve, they miss the ball. Conscious meddling ruins optimized, hardwired performance. We must redefine what willpower actually is. It is not the act of making real-time, instantaneous decisions. Willpower is the act of using your frontal lobe to repeatedly train your automated robot. You squelch short-term impulses over and over until the resistance itself becomes a hardwired, automatic zombie system. Your conscious mind is a programmer. It endures the friction of learning a new habit, strictly so your unconscious machinery can execute it automatically later. You are a collection of competing alien subroutines. Part of your circuitry demands sugar, while another part monitors long-term health. Your conscious self acts as an arbitrator. It only steps into the light when two trained zombie systems lock up, forcing a final vote. If you scroll away now, you abandon the intelligence required to hack your own automated circuitry. Subscribe to continue mapping the mechanics of your mind. Because if your neural circuitry finalizes its plans before you are even aware of them, who is actually living your life?